Just before I get started, anyone remember that program on Trouble TV? And for all my American visitors, hi by the way. Does anyone not remember that program called with was it Flex Alexander called One on One? For some reason, that fucking song is just stuck in my head. Alright, I've got to sing it. Sometimes hit the spot, you can be all by yourself. Check 1, 2. Now it's just begun, baby. One on one, baby. Does anyone remember that? And then it ended on a cliffhanger when they all went to college or something, and Skinny Ray J and oh my god. Ugh. Sorry, one of my guilty pleasures. And speaking of another guilty pleasure, well, I'm not really ashamed. We all know it. I'm a big wrestling fan, and you know what? It's been interesting because a lot of people have talked about their current gripes. I mean, we always talk about our gripes of wrestling, number one, but Seth Rollins, a lot of people say, is a weak champion and looks like a fool and looks like a child when he's with Triple H and is emasculated by Stephanie McMahon and just looks completely out of place. Like, I don't think people have fully bought into him as a main event WWE champion on par with Cena and on par with Lesnar and on par with Randy Orton and all those other names that are in that mix. I think that's one of the things. A lot of people have a hard time buying into him. And when I was thinking on that, my mind went on this journey. It was quite funny, actually. My mind went on this journey. And you go from Seth Rollins being a weak champion and what could remedy that. If he was booked better, you start playing armchair booker and, all of those things. And then your mind wanders. And then you think about other times where you have seen wrestlers on the way up and they've needed that one thing that kind of elevates them and fans buy into them and people view them on par with the current and past crop of main event legends and superstars and all of that. And then you start thinking and then for some weird reason my mind went to this whole thing that's wrestling's always telling us who we need to respect, and my mind went from the Seth Rollins thing to that, and it's all going to tie in very nicely in a minute. So you're thinking about the whole, we're supposed to respect The Undertaker, we're supposed to respect Triple H, we're supposed to respect Kurt Angle. These guys are grafted, these guys have put all their time in, and yes, I respect the mentality of wrestling. God knows how many matches in the space of 1 year, and there's something about that I respect. And then you start thinking about legacies and leaving things behind, and to me, legacy is what you leave behind so that the next generation can grow off of that. And to me, in professional wrestling, there are not too many people who have that kind of legacy of doing the right thing at the right time for the next guy to come up or for the promotion to grow. And everyone talks about how we got to respect The Undertaker, but then I remember when it was time for the invasion angle, how as the locker room leader, I personally felt he set a very bad example on screen. I mean, only in pro wrestling can a guy like The Undertaker beat up 10 WCW wrestlers multiple times over and over and over and over again and give Dallas Page absolutely nothing. And I remember the cage match with O'Haire and Palumbo and give him absolutely nothing. And then he's done it many other times. As much as a big fan of his I am, I can look at this objectively and say there are times when I feel like he's kind of done things that he shouldn't have. Then my mind starts thinking about people who, Triple H is another one that gets accused of it a lot. And there's a lot of evidence out there that suggests that. And then my mind is thinking about, well, really, legacy, tying it in with respecting people, and then the whole Seth Rollins is a weak champion. And examples of guys in the same position that Seth was in, what they needed was someone out there to go in there with them that was already respected, already perceived as a top guy, and to bring them up to that level. And to me, that's a bigger legacy that a lot of wrestlers don't necessarily leave behind. And then I was thinking of who encapsulates that, who epitomizes that the very, very best. And then it hit me, and let me just get the book. Oh, my big fat backside. There we go. And the one name that springs to mind every time I think about it is this man right here. Yep, Mick Foley. Mankind, Cactus Jack, Dude Love, whatever name you want to call him. He, to me, is a legend of the professional wrestling entertainment world that needs to be respected. And I feel very, very, very strongly about this. I feel like it's so overlooked. I think people just remember the big bumps that he took, you know, at Hell in a Cell with The Undertaker and the violent hardcore matches. And yep, they are a part of his body of work. But the most poignant thing that he has ever done, to me, is bringing these guys up and getting them ready and helping facilitate their box office appeal so that they could then go on and then go on to do big things. And there aren't too many wrestlers that do that. Other than Flair was another one who, you know, Flair did that. I mean, no Flair, no Sting, no Luger, no Wyndham. That's just my opinion. But Mick Foley in particular, especially in the late 90s, when he's at the height of his popularity, you know, everybody watched that documentary. He was very heavily featured there. He came out with a renewed celebrity, so to speak, in the late 90s. He was the WWF's one of their top guys in the late 90s. He had that great, you know, well, that memorable Hell in a Cell match with The Undertaker, and actually I think brought out more quality out of The Undertaker, to be honest with you, but that's another thing. But then you look at when he was the champion and he wrestled The Rock, and The Rock was not fully accepted as a legit tough guy, badass heel world champion. He was not fully accepted. The turn from Rocky Maivia to The Rock was part one. This new character was the you know, part of that change. That match at SummerSlam really, really helped him. He was starting to get there, but he was not viewed as that guy that would go in there with Stone Cold Steve Austin until Mick Foley got in there with him. And Mick Foley lost to him graciously at Survivor Series and put him over as a strong heel. Obviously, they traded the belt back and forth, but if you think about it, by the time their feud and their rivalry was done in February, The Rock came out for the better for it and was far more accepted by WrestleMania 15 by the fans and by the wrestlers as the WWF champion, the top guy alongside Steve Austin. And The Rock pretty much went from there, and it was off to the races for him, in my opinion. And that's all because Mick Foley got in there and did the right thing at the right time, at the peak of his powers, in his prime, at the height of celebrity, where he could really just go in and say, well, fuck it, I'm going to beat The Rock, and I'm going to beat this guy, 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 because I need to look strong. Instead, he did the opposite, and he made the other guy look strong. And then you go down the list even more, and you think about Randy Orton. And I'm leaving one name out because I'm going back to him on purpose. But you go to Randy Orton, and remember that Randy Orton was going to be the, you know, the next big thing when he was signed into OVW alongside Brock Lesnar and Batista and John Cena. Randy was the guy. Randy was the next Rock, but not everybody bought into that, and he was perceived as this and labelled as this pretty boy wrestler, you know, this over-pushed, spoiled, pretty boy that's been pandered to, that's basically had everything handed to him, and they used that as part of the Orton character, but there were fans who really perceived that, and wrestlers who really believed that. And then Mick Foley goes in there with Randy Orton, and we remember that feud in 2003, which started around the time of Bad Blood, I think. And you can see in the microphone, if you go back, he's making Orton look like an equal Freudian slip. And Orton's doing really well out of this, and he's showing some poise, and he's showing some charisma, and he's showing some personality. And the fact is, he's in there with someone the level of a Mick Foley who can verbally communicate in the way that he does. You're playing catch up, but Orton played catch up very, very well. And then when Foley came back to wrestle, when Foley came back, and because he'd signed a contract and he was going to do some matches, there are so many veterans in wrestling that have come back and said, oh well, I've got to beat the up and coming guy, I got to beat them. Just ask CM Punk how that worked out for him when Triple H came back from his break and beat him when he was on the rise. You've seen so many people do it, but Mick Foley came in and he lost twice to Randy Orton, and he put him over strongly in all the angles too, as a real threat and future of the business. He really, really did a fantastic and phenomenal job of that. That WrestleMania match where it was him and The Rock versus Batista, Flair and Orton. He lost 1, 2, 3 to him, and that was very, very good. But then you go to the match at Backlash, and that's the hardcore match, the violent, ultra-violent hardcore match. And again, still people hadn't bought into Randy Orton at this point. But by the time that match had happened, and that match was over, and then you go to the next night on Raw, and the following weeks after that, fans had finally bought into Randy Orton as the guy, as one of the guys. People respected him. People viewed Orton very, very differently after that. That bump that he took onto the thumbtacks, that he was able to beat Foley at his own game, that he bled, that he wasn't just this pretty boy wrestler, that he did all of these things. Everybody viewed Orton very, very differently. And let's be real, Orton became a superstar after that. Pretty much, he became a superstar after that. Now, unfortunately, he was the victim of a lot of bad booking and his own self-destructive behaviour after that, which is what set him back. But if it was not for Foley, I don't think Orton would be what he would be. The same can apply to Edge. We all know what happened after Edge lost to Cena. It was rumoured he'd be lost in the shuffle, but Foley gets in there with them and he kind of rejuvenates him and keeps him going and gives him some extended momentum to keep his run going. And then you think to one name in particular, one top WWF main event guy that is still profiting right now as one of the top guys in the company, has a very, very strong position in the company. And the one name that I think of, and I tie this into Mick Foley, is Triple H. Now, think back to the days of the WWF. Well, I remember them when he was in D-Generation X and when he was the Greenwich Stomp. People all thought that this man was an overrated, overpushed, mid-card guy. He was Shawn's lackey. That was it. That was the label. Then he had the D-Generation X when it was him and the Road Dogg and Billy Gunn, Pac and China and all those guys. And he kind of did quite well out of that. But people still kind of saw him as a mid-carder, not a main eventer, not a WWF champion. Then he leaves, joins the corporation, and then he starts to get a bit of steam. But you look at how he was booked as champion for the first few months. He didn't actually beat Austin in the way that he needed to. So his run didn't get off to the best start. It was Mick Foley that had to win for Hunter to beat him so Hunter could be the champion. And then even then, he was stripped of the belt, won it back in a six-match challenge. It was not helping him. The things they were doing were not actually helping Triple H. It was just, making him look like a hot potato champion. This wasn't working for him. It was when, in late December, and he lost the belt, didn't he, as well? He lost the belt to Big Show. But it was when Mick Foley got in there with him and did what he did with him from 1999 to 2000 that changed Hunter's fortunes completely. Because you go back and you watch that, people hadn't bought into him. Foley goes in there as Mankind, loses his job, gets reinstated when Hunter and Steph are in control of the company. Hunter beats him pretty up badly on the end of Raw. Mick Foley then takes the Mankind mask off, becomes Cactus Jack. Now he's going to exact his revenge on him. And you would think at this point in the story, that is when Mick Foley, Cactus Jack, who is now raised the stakes, is going to win and beat Triple H. Now he's this legendary Cactus Jack character. And we should believe at this point that Cactus Jack will beat him in Madison Square Garden. We all know his history there. In a hardcore match at the Royal Rumble, you would think that Mick Foley would beat him. And then you could say, well, logically, Hunter wins it back at the next show, but it didn't happen. Hunter beat him at his own game. Hunter beat Mick Foley cleanly at his own game. And that changed perceptions of Triple H. Was the start of the change of perceptions of that guy. Then you go to Hell in a Cell. And again, Hell in a Cell, the stakes are even higher because he has now put this in a Hell in a Cell for the title inside the Hell in a Cell, and to add to that also, the career is on the line. So you would think, well, there's no way that Foley is going to lose. He's got to win right. Hunter beat him the last time. He's got to get his revenge. And if you go to those 4 weeks building up, he did everything he could to make Hunter look like the guy to go into WrestleMania. And I remember an angle where they tied him on the back of a truck inside a cage and drove down the road with him and stuff like that. They did all these things they could when really Mick Foley could have come in and said, fuck that. I'm going to beat him up for 4 weeks. I'm going to destroy him for 4 weeks. He gets a lucky pinfall. But it didn't happen. Instead, Hunter backdrops him through the roof of the cell. Foley falls right down. Hunter climbs back down and wins 1, 2, 3 and ends Foley's career for that time. And yet again, Mick Foley did the right thing at the right time, at the peak of his powers in his prime, when he really could have said, fuck it, I'm a bigger star than him. But he got him ready, and by the time he got to WrestleMania 2000, people brought into Triple H. The perception of him being an overpushed, overrated mid-carder for most of us had changed, and people viewed him as a box office attraction. And I think that Hunter went on to be a superstar because of Mick Foley. And that's the mentality that is missing right now in wrestling. And you need somebody that is going to speak up, behind the scenes and speak up and then on screen and do something. I feel that's one of the things that Seth Rollins is missing right now. He needs somebody with that mentality that's going to get him ready, because I do agree, Seth is a weak champion. He is emasculated on television weekly by Stephanie McMahon. He looks like an absolute child when he's with Triple H. He looks out of his place with all the main event guys. He looks like an overpushed mid-card guy, and he needs somebody to come in there that's not afraid to put their neck on the line to bring him up, and that is missing. And you think someone would have done it by now, but no one really truly has, and that's something that's missing. And I think that's why guys like Mick Foley need to be respected, because those are the people that have actually, pretty much helped create main event guys. Foley with The Rock, Foley with Orton, Triple H, extended Edge's run. You need people like that, and look at what they became after Foley was in there with them. And then you think about where that mentality came from, and it came from his own mentor Terry Funk, because if you think about it like this, no Terry Funk, no ECW. It was Terry Funk who went in there in Eastern Championship Wrestling with Shane Douglas and Sabu and did what he did and put his reputation and his neck on the line to help build that promotion and its stars. And to me, those are the guys that need to be respected. Those are the guys. I mean, come on. Oh, you got to respect The Undertaker. Oh, you got to respect... Yeah, whatever. Why don't you respect the guys that actually put stock into the guys coming up, put their necks on the line and their reputations on the line to bring somebody up? I would also say maybe Cena to an extent this year with Kevin Owens. Cena's done a great, and it looks like Cena's starting to do that more and more these days. But when you think about it, it's the Foleys and the Terry Funks of this world that to me are the true legends of wrestling and the true people that need to be respected, and also Ric Flair too. Anyways, that's my rant done for the day, and I hope you enjoyed my little song. Or Janice is going off now. If you haven't before, comment down below. Let me know how you think about this, what you think about this. Does Seth Rollins need somebody of that mentality? Do you feel like guys like Mick Foley and Terry Funk are not respected enough, or it's not acknowledged as to what they contributed to wrestling? Is that the thing that sticks out in your mind the most? Let me know what you think. Let me know how you feel. If you find me on Reddit, hello, subscribe down below. Comment, like, share, follow me on Twitter, and I am out. Goodbye.